Welcome back. And today in the podcast, we're going to be talking about the 7 difficult lessons I learned when I was building my business on LinkedIn. And I'm hoping you, by listening to this, will save yourself some time, some heartache, some frustration, some imposter syndrome, because until I got this stuff, I went round and round in circles. Like, I literally was endlessly frustrated, didn't get it, and constantly was comparing myself to other people and going, why is it not working? Why is this difficult? Why is this? I was going through basically torture. And every time I'd see another LinkedIn hack, and we're talking years ago now, but even today, it gets me angry when I see people offering stuff that doesn't work. And I'm going to walk through them. And there's one particular point I really want to unpack because I see so many people trapped by this that it stops them and basically screws them over. So there's one I'm really going to go into detail on because I think it's so important. So I'm going to walk you through the kind of thought process that I had, why they came about, and why these thought processes were shit, basically. So the first one was, I didn't want to come across as salesy or desperate. Many years ago, I was really desperate. Some of you know I've told the story before. I had an unpleasant business split with who was my best man at my wedding. It didn't work out very well. And I was in a very desperate place. And I went onto LinkedIn and I was torn in two between I need business, I need clients, and I don't want to come across as that kind of person. And it was a nightmare for me because I couldn't get round that. I'd seen so many sales messages, so many things that I didn't like of what I'd seen, that I was like, I don't want to do that. I'd seen the annoying ones, I'd seen everything, and I didn't want to do it. But what I eventually realized was what I was angry about was irrelevant outreach. I wasn't angry about people contacting me saying I'd done the research, I'd looked at what you're doing. I don't mean just like, fill in the blanks templates. I mean, I was angry at the people where, I got one the other day offering to help me manage my car parks. What the hell? I don't have car parks. Where would that even come from? So it's that what I was getting angry about. But over the years, I've had some people who've outreached me really well, and they've took the time to actually understand me, get to know me, look through what I'm doing, and actually outreach to me. And that was great. And what I'd done is I'd bunched annoying outreach, irrelevant outreach, and salesy stuff into one camp. And I realized actually that this seeming salesy, in other words, I don't want to make any asks. I'd lumped the good, the bad, and the ugly into one camp. And when I realized that actually, if I'd done the work, if I'm crafting this personally, people actually appreciate you taking that time. Now, it doesn't mean 100% success rate, but people actually appreciate it. And so I was sat there, tearing myself in two, getting frustrated because I needed business and was avoiding doing something because of a bigger, broader problem that had nothing to do with what I wanted to do, which was more relevant, focused, targeted outreach. Once I got over that, in the time I've done outreach on LinkedIn for 10 years, I've probably had 4, maybe 5 shitty responses. 4 or 5, because it's targeted. 2 of those shitty responses were me asking people in my network, would they help anonymously fill in a form for me? Because I'm trying to research my market. And I said I didn't want any details whatsoever. I just wanted some honest feedback to help understand my market better. and one person said fuck off and one person blocked me. Like, I wasn't selling anything. I didn't want their email address. I didn't want anything. I just wanted their help if they had 5 minutes. They could have ignored it. So in all that time, and I must have sent hundreds of messages in that time, four. So what we do is we lump it all together. We go, oh, that's bad. So if that's bad, I can't do any outreach. And then we wonder why. We wonder why we're getting nowhere. We wonder why we're stuck. So, and let me just be clear, right? In this past week, I've had four outreach messages from influencers trying to sell their program. And they don't talk about this, but they do outreach too. If you look at influencers' profiles, you'll see them talking about how content brings them everything. They're in the DMs. They just don't focus on telling you they get into the DMs. They get into the DMs. And let me ask you this, right? Or just think this. If their content's so wonderful, if they're getting all of this traction from the content and you're desiring that content, we'll come to that later, why do they need to do DMs? If the content's bringing them business, why do they need to do DMs? It doesn't make any sense. So DMs need to happen. It's not DMs are bad. It's how you do them that's bad. If you don't research, if you don't target, if you don't focus, if you're not personal, all of that stuff works against it. If you've not built some relationship beforehand, all of that stuff doesn't work. But I was stuck on all DMs are bad because I'd annoy people and I'd look desperate. And the reality is, I was probably a bit afraid initially of doing messages, and I just made up excuses. I made up reasons why I shouldn't do it. But, at the end of the day, messaging people and talking to people, I've closed some great opportunities, some big opportunities just by doing that. And most people don't do it, or they don't have a routine to do it. They don't have a plan to do it. So selling and outreach is not bad. It's just how you do it that will either make you look desperate or stupid. It's about being focused, relevant, and building rapport first. So number 2, so that was number 1, DMs, selling and looking desperate. Number 2, I need a huge following to get clients. Oh my God, the amount of times I have to knock this out of clients, it does my head in. Like, numbers are great. Let's just be clear, right? If I could get 1 million followers, I want 1 million followers. If I could get 1 billion followers, I want 1 billion followers, right? Let's just be honest, right? We want that. But if I need followers to get clients, my strategy is a joke. If I can't convert people at a small level, what makes you think I'll convert them at a bigger level? And I get the logic. If you have more followers, more people see you, and it's more likely you get more leads, and I get all of that. But there's a fundamental assumption that by trying to appeal to get mass amounts of followers, that you will get the followers who are the right people. There's an assumption that, if I just focus on talking to my target audience and they're 5,000, if I can change and tweak things and get to 100,000, it's more likely there'll be more. It's not true. It's an assumption. And there's a reason why I have had a number of influencers through my accelerator program, because despite them doing content, sometimes, a lot of the time, some of these influencers are getting better results on their content than me. But they go, Dean, how do you make way much more money than me? They don't get it. Because what they've done is they've built this generalized front end that draws in followers at scale. But the downside is most of those people are not interested. They're not interested in what I've got to offer. They just like the motivational quote and decided to follow because they want more motivational quotes. I can't sell into that. And so you don't need a big following. Yeah, it's nice to have, but I would rather be certain and clear that I'm getting a following of the right people. I don't mean you can't get a big following. I mean, a big following on its own is not enough. And the reason I say this is if you're an influencer and that's your business model is not like the average person on LinkedIn. The average person on LinkedIn sells their services. That could be technology services, physical services, it doesn't matter what products. They're selling something. Now, if you're an influencer, most of the time, influencers are selling you. They're selling your eyeballs. They're being paid to post. I get paid stuff to post and I get paid to feature on stuff. That's different. And so what happens if you follow the influencer strategy, you could end up going broader and not appeal, not build that subject matter expertise, and then trying to make your money, you've built the influencer's business model and trying to sell your product through it, and it doesn't work. You know, I'll give you an example, right? One of the easiest gigs in town is to sell marketing services, particularly LinkedIn on LinkedIn, Instagram on Instagram, TikTok on TikTok. It's the easiest gig in town. Why? Because LinkedIn is full of people the active people on LinkedIn want to get better at LinkedIn. It's a captive audience. It's like you're walking into a room full of your target ideal customers. So it's much easier to sell marketing-related services, copywriting, content creation, LinkedIn growth, Instagram growth on those channels. And then the stupidity of it is a lot of the people who grow by teaching people about that then think that that can be replicated with other people who are not doing it. And what you discover, and go and test me on this, is they build an audience. It's quite sneaky, really. They build an audience, and when you look at who their audience is in the comments and the likes and everything, it's other people who do the same thing. And what they do is they sell their course, their know-how, to people lower down the rungs on the same service. So in other words, it's like me setting up a LinkedIn course. I don't do courses. I do workshops. I do live training, but I don't do online courses. It's like me setting up an online course about LinkedIn growth, then growing my LinkedIn to appeal just to people who do LinkedIn ghostwriting, personal branding for LinkedIn, all that stuff. And I sell them the course. And that's what the majority of people are doing. Look in the comments. Most of the people commenting on these big gurus' posts on every channel are people, I want to say little people, I don't mean it in that way, but people who are not as big as that person trying to learn from that person to do the same thing. Some would say that's a pyramid scheme, and it probably is. I teach LinkedIn gurus how to be better LinkedIn gurus so they can be LinkedIn gurus. That's what happens. And so what happens is people who are not in that group try and replicate it with that big following and all that stuff, and then try and achieve that in their own industry, and it doesn't work. And they go, what's wrong with me? Maybe I need to change this. Maybe I need to change that. No, you're trying to do a model that was never designed for you. So do you need a huge following? No. If you've got 500 people in your network who are your ideal clients and you've not been able to convert them, you have a strategy problem. No amount of adding another 500 clients in there, ideal clients in there, will fix that problem. More does not fix core problems. All you're doing is basically trading, trying to get volume to fix a strategy problem, and it doesn't work. So I've went through this until I realized I would focus down, clearly communicate, have a process. It didn't work. So followers, they're nice to have, but they're only nice to have if, one, they're the right followers, and two, you know how to convert them. Otherwise, it's wasted energy. Number 3. Right, this is the big one. This is the one that most people get stuck on. So it kind of leads to the previous point. Some people, a lot of people on LinkedIn, and I was the same, were not very clear on what we were actually selling. I know what I was selling. I knew what I was selling. But when it come to looking through my content, looking through my profile, looking through what I was doing, it was not clear. And I thought it was clear because I understand what I do inside out, because I'm me. But I didn't take the time to objectively look and go, from a prospect's point of view, why does any of this matter? If they go to my profile, would they know how I could help them and why that matters for them? Would they see that I'm solving a problem for them? Would they see the reason to talk to me? And when I started to be quite brutal about this and kind of remove myself from my own, my own bias, I was fully informed. But when I started to do it, I realized, oh my God, I'm not very clear here. And the other thing I was doing is I was trying to cater to 2 or 3 different types of buyers at any one time. So I was talking to business owners, I was talking to marketing teams, I was talking to sales enablement teams, and I was talking to 3 or 4 different groups. And the problem was, whilst I delivered the same services for all 3 groups, the reasons, the motivations, the problems, the challenges that all 3 groups had were different. So I had the same service that I would deliver, same fundamental service that could be applied to all 3 of those people and all 3 of those types of businesses and all 3 of those different challenges that they had. The difference is the perspective. The perspective of each of those 3 decision makers was different. Their language, the way they would talk about it, the way their challenge manifested in their business, their level of investment in terms of in the problem, it was all different. Even though I was solving pretty much the same thing. I was doing the same thing to solve the problem, but that problem was slightly different for each one of them. So this is a weird thing. I do LinkedIn training. I can do LinkedIn training for sales teams. I can do it for marketing teams on company pages. I can teach solopreneurs how to do it. I can teach recruiters how to do it. So I could go out and say, hey, I do LinkedIn. Yeah. The issue is, how do I communicate for those different groups? And I didn't get this until I realized, oh, yeah, HR people are looking to recruit people, use LinkedIn to hire new talent. Slightly different angle. Oh, salespeople are trying to prospect better. So that's a bit different. Oh, marketers are trying to get more brand reach, impressions, engagement on their company pages. Oh, solopreneurs just want to win clients. Same platform, same level of knowledge, but obviously the emphasis and the importance of different aspects was different for those 4 groups. But I was just talking to everybody. I was talking to them all. And what I didn't realize, what it really took me a long time to realize is I can't clearly resonate with all 4 of those groups at the same time. So I would put a post out promoting my LinkedIn training. And if I wrote the post and wrote the offer and put it all together as if it was appealing to people who want to win clients, small business owners, etc., salespeople wouldn't get that. Marketing people wouldn't get that. And so at any one time, I was constantly alienating 75% of the people I wanted to target. So I suddenly realized, actually, what I need to do is have an offer clearly defined for the marketing team, for the sales team, for the small business owner, for their HR team, and clearly communicate what they need and only focus on that group at any given time. And that specificity allowed me to become more relevant because they could say, oh, this is for recruiters. This is for recruiters. This is going to help us hire the right people and find the right people. So it was more specific. What I was doing before was relying on, he's a LinkedIn expert, so he must know how to help us recruit people. He must know how to help us win clients. He must know how to help us prospect better. He must know how to help us grow our company page. I assumed that my target audience would join the dots, and they wouldn't because I wasn't being specific. And I was putting the work on my target audience to figure that out. And as soon as I started to go, I can't talk to all these people at once. Like, I can't be specific enough. I can't be relevant enough. I can't be focused enough. The analogies I used, the examples I used can't resonate with them because I'm not being too specific enough. So I had all these challenges where I was talking to 4 different groups at once. And when I tried to talk to all 4 groups, I missed the mark. And when I tried to talk to one group, even though I'd grown my network with all 4, I basically made myself irrelevant. So what I had to do was focus on one group so that I could make everything more tailored, more specific, so they could see, Dean's an expert in this for us. That's relevant to me. Let's have a look. Let's see what this is all about. So that was really, really a big thing for me in terms of not necessarily niching down, not necessarily niching down in the sense of I only do this for these people, but at least focusing or niching on a market for a season. So I help people with LinkedIn. That's 4 different groups that I serve. I might focus on one particular group for a particular period, say 3 months. I might be focused on one group because I could cut through. I'm not advocating that you permanently niche down, because eventually every business has to expand out from a niche, but it's much easier and simpler to focus on one group at a time and get success with one group at a time. So that was a big lesson for me, number 3. Number 4, and this is one of there might be a couple of biggies here. Likes, impressions, and comments don't mean you're successful. They don't mean you're successful. Like I said, I've had people message me saying, with 200,000 followers, saying they're making no money. 200,000 followers making no money. I've had people message me saying they're going to have to get a job. I've seen people with big followings go and get a job. And interestingly, there are some people at the moment who are seemingly growing at an accelerated pace that defies all logic. And there's a few people at LinkedIn curious about what's going on here, that they're growing at a pace that does not make sense. And what they're doing is they're playing all the dark arts, but they're also playing to every little trick. And they're using their broad appeal by sharing motivational quotes, leadership stuff, appealing to disaffected employees where they talk about workplace culture and everything. They're using what are very, 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 very broad topics that most of the working population would have an opinion on to convince people to spend thousands of pounds to join their LinkedIn growth program. And this is what's called the halo effect. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because I've seen so many people suckered into this, and it ruins them. So what basically goes on is, if we see a person or a post with lots of engagement, we are wired internally to think that they must be a smart, intelligent expert. We put more weight on their words. This is a proven thing. It's not me making shit up. So we put more weight on what they have to say. And there's things that come to play that when a post takes off, snowball effect kicks in. People start to jump on and engage with it because it's got engagement. So the halo effect is, you see somebody who's got lots of engagement, lots of all stuff, and then you think that they must be an expert because of look at all that approval that they've got. The snowball effect is basically more people jump on it because of that. And then the third part of that is, because of that, we think that we should have that too. Now, the platform, and this is true of all platforms, want you to chase likes, comments, and impressions. You help them fill the feed. And so they want to create, and I had this conversation, I've just recorded a podcast with Holly Hayes, and we're going to bring that out soon, about the platforms generally like to rug pull to get you on this never-ending quest for more and more engagement, because that keeps you on the platform, it keeps you working on the platform. If they made it easy for everybody to get engagement, just think about this, right? Let's imagine it was easy for everybody to get engagement. Let's imagine 1 million views. Everybody could get 1 million views, right? What happens? Well, suddenly 1 million views doesn't mean anything anymore. And so they take it for granted. So the platform doesn't want that to happen. So the platform won't let everybody have reach. It will only create the reach based on what's going on. So some people will be buried and some people will thrive and some people will be in the middle. But the deception is that engagement equals revenue, and it isn't true. If you were getting 1 million views from your ideal clients on every post, you would be unstoppable. But the reality is that's not going to happen. Imagine if you had a scenario where everybody could get high-performing posts, right? That is the equivalent of EasyJet letting everybody buy speedy boarding. What happens? What happens when everybody buys speedy boarding? Nobody gets on that plane quickly. Nobody. In fact, the better experience is to sit down, relax, and wait till all those people have gone. So don't fall into the trap of thinking that if I get engagement, more engagement, I'll get more clients. It's an assumption that most of the time isn't true. The biggest question you should be asking is, how do I make this, a more sophisticated question should be, how do I make my posts more engaging for my target audience? So if you're getting likes and comments and they're not from ideal clients, you have to think about, how do I get them to engage with me more? Not just make the leap of more engagement equals more clients. It's not true. It really isn't true. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've seen people come. I've seen people go. I've seen people blow up and burn out. I've seen people blow up and go broke. So it's not the answer to basically just think that metrics, more likes, more comments, more impressions alone will get you there. It won't. It's more of the right likes, comments, and impressions. And let's be honest, there are people on LinkedIn who aren't posting and are getting business. I know that sounds strange. I'll explain that a little bit later, but you can actually get clients on LinkedIn without spamming people, without pitching people, without being salesy, and get clients. So think about, what's your time investment? What's the best use of your time to get the best result for what you want to achieve? Now, if you want to build up thought leadership on LinkedIn, that's fine. But go into that with your eyes wide open, that may take time. And maybe that's something you should be doing in as one strategy, but your strategy for client acquisition should not be reliant on that strategy being successful. So run 2 strategies at once. If you want to build up that big position on the platform, cool, that's fine. But don't necessarily think that if I just do that, it will all come to me. It really doesn't. So number 5, and I kind of hinted at that one. Content is king. Content is king. Totally wrong. Totally wrong. And let me just explain why, and why most LinkedIn trainers are naive. So most of the advice you'll see on LinkedIn is engage with your prospects' posts. If you engage with them before you outreach, you get more success. Like and comment on their posts and do all this stuff. It's total bullshit. A tiny percentage of the user base actually post. Tiny percentage. We're talking like 2%. 2% of the platform actually post on LinkedIn. So yes, content's good. I'm not saying don't post, but content alone is not going to do it. You need to build a strategy that cannot and should not rely on an algorithm distributing your content. It should not rely on people messaging inbound to you. If inbound was predictable, go for it. But it isn't. There's a reason why all companies have sales teams and marketing teams and have multi-channel approaches. But posting content to bring all the leads to you, right? If you don't believe me, go do it and then come back to me in a year and apologize. Because I know so many people go down this route. And I've got somebody on my accelerator who was convinced by another LinkedIn trainer that this is what she should do. And guess what? It got her nowhere. It got absolutely nowhere. Again, LinkedIn guru advice that does not translate to a real business. So yes, posting content, it's very important. Letting people get to know you, adding value, showing and communicating how you help people, all of that stuff, not too promotional, let people buy into you is absolutely sound. And that all helps a wider plan of how am I going to get this connection who doesn't know my name to a conversation on a call where we can talk properly. That's the process. And what most people do is go, well, if you do all the content, all of the rest takes care of itself. And I've worked with hundreds of business owners, and I know that strategy doesn't work. And why I get frustrated and angry about this is because I can see there is a certain allure to it. Think about it as a dream, right? I post content and all the clients come to me. Sounds fantastic. I'd love that. Like, I get inbound leads. I get enough. If I was a solopreneur with my LinkedIn account on today, I'd probably do all right. But I've built my LinkedIn over 10 years. So I'd expect to do all right as a solopreneur. But if you try to follow that, because it is a dream we all want, it is something we want to believe, right? We want to believe that if we just crack this content code, everything will come our way and the cash will be flowing, money will fall from the sky. And when we've got our brains, when we're in our logical brain mode, we go, yeah, of course that can't happen. But when we are actually in our emotive, human-natured person, that's where we fall to. That if we just do this, and that's how you're sold into all these freaking courses, because you're chasing something that actually nowhere in the business landscape, except for social media people selling social media or LinkedIn people selling LinkedIn, doesn't work. Does not work anywhere else, right? So content's important, but it's not the whole piece of the puzzle. I've got a client and they're doing no content. They're doing no content, no outreach. They are using other strategies on LinkedIn rather than posting to actually draw people in and start conversations. Now, that's probably not relevant for every last business, but I know people who are not using content at all. It depends on the industry, it depends on the sector, and it depends on the goals, but it's not a critical part. It's important and it helps, but for most people, it's the icing on the cake of a system to convert people into clients. It's the icing on the cake. It's not the cake. And I took a long time to get over this and deal with this and accept this, because my personal bias was I want that to happen. I want that to be true. And what I was doing was spending more and more time on the content because people said, oh, if you just improve your hooks and if you just do this and if you just do that, it's a rat race. Endlessly chasing, how do I get these posts to go up even further and further and further and get them better? And I was neglecting the systems, the boring stuff that just works in the background, that brings me booked calls every week, that brings me inbound leads from other, but systems that don't require me pandering to an algorithm. The opportunities, the downloads, the list growth, all of that stuff was neglected for if I can just do more content and get better at content. And I get it. We're wired to want that approval. We're wired to want that dream of everything becoming inbound. But you're basically betting everything on, when you're doing that, you're basically taking a gamble that something that you do will win over 20 other million people posting. That's what you're doing. 20 to 1. Whereas a system can be far more predictable, far more focused, and get you better results. So think about your content and your inbound leads as the icing on the cake. And I know that's not popular because you'll have people in your feed on LinkedIn telling you how many inbound leads they get. But remember, why are they telling you how many inbound leads they get? They're telling you because they want you to go, well, I want them. And they sell you their shit based on they got inbound leads, I want inbound leads. And it's very difficult to do. And I know this isn't popular. Some of you will tune out because you go, I don't want to listen to this because other people are telling you this. Go and try it. Go and try it. I don't need to prove it to you. You can go do it. You can go do it. And you'll see content is important. It's helpful. It's the icing on the cake. It's not the cake. Number 6, I've got one more after this. So one of the things we can forget quite quickly is that LinkedIn is just a room full of people. And I see this a lot. We forget that actually these are people. And the best approaches that I've worked on LinkedIn have always been when you put the person that you're talking to or trying to engage with or trying to, get them on a call, put them at the center and what matters for them, what's important for them. And it's very easy to go, oh, I've got 500 ideal clients. No, you've got 500 people. And we're all a bit similar. We all behave in very similar ways, logic and emotion and feelings and all of that stuff. But they're individuals. And one of the best strategies I've done with sales teams, when I'm working with sales teams, is to actually go, how can we outreach to this person in a way that's totally unique to them and they feel like you've put effort in because you've got something valuable to offer. And when sales teams do that, I've done it with some small businesses as well, they actually get massive success because people can pick up on when somebody's being generic versus somebody's being really, really focused. And so when you lose sight of the fact that these are people, you start to forget what matters. You start to forget how they feel and what they think and what their priorities are. And I have a little action figure on my desk and it symbolizes my ideal client. And when I'm writing my posts and when I'm doing stuff on LinkedIn, I go back to and look at and go, how do I think about this? How would they think about this? I look through the person's profile, look what they've been engaging with, look at what they've been doing to try and make it as personal and as unique as possible so that they see I'm not just copy and pasting. I'm not just sending something generic. I've actually done some work and they appreciate that. So when you start to see people as people, not just profiles, the other thing is as well, in this section, a lot of people say, oh, my clients aren't on LinkedIn. My decision maker's too busy for LinkedIn. Let me just say, that's not true. They are on LinkedIn. There's 1 billion people on LinkedIn. The question is LinkedIn the best way to reach them? That's a good, honest, legitimate question. Yeah, and then the second part is, how would I engage them on LinkedIn? They are there, right? Most of the time they are there. There's 1 billion people, so it's highly unlikely. What tends to be is this is a warped understanding of your ideal client. One of the things I do in my workshops a lot when I'm doing events and things is I put a diagram on screen, and I put 4 groups of people on the screen, and I say which is the most active group on LinkedIn, and then automatically people will go to salespeople or recruiters, and I tell them it's not true, because the most active group are actually business owners, C-level people, directors, and most people don't believe me. They don't believe me. I show them the stats in sales and I show how I found that out, and they go, why did I think that? It's because sometimes what we do is we take an opinion that's ours and we project it as fact. I showed somebody the other week, they said, oh, my decision maker is definitely not on LinkedIn. They don't have time to do that. And then I literally went through, did a sales nav search. We looked at half a dozen, and then, oh, they are here. They are here. I was like, where did you get this thing from? Well, and they didn't want to say it, but they just assumed, because it was something they thought, they projected that as fact. So your audience are there, but you've got to think about them as people and how do I engage them as a person. It's very, very difficult. I've said this to people before. If you want to automate LinkedIn, it's very, very difficult to make it successful. And people will sell you all sorts of tools to try and do it. It's very difficult to make it successful because you can't, at least right now, AI, it's not good enough to do the research and tailor it properly. It's not good enough to do it well. And I had a client who did it really, really well just recently. They targeted 140 people, and out of the 140 people, they got 43 calls booked because they were very, very focused, made it very, very personal. If you'd have tried to do that with cold outreach or automated outreach rather, and used template messages, you probably would have gotten nothing. Cold outreach, impersonal outreach, templates is a huge numbers game. So the more personal you go, the more effective it is. Right, the final one. Systems trump shiny objects. There are a ton of tools out there. There are a ton of gadgets. There are a ton of strategies, everything out there. And I'm sure a lot of them are very good. I'm sure a lot of them are extremely useful. But you're not going on LinkedIn, and I wasn't going on LinkedIn to just buy shit and not actually use it. And one of the things that really is powerful, and it took me a long time, is to understand that if I chase trends to try and get quick wins, I will be constantly chasing trends to get quick wins. So what I'll be doing, I'll be buying stuff, learning stuff, implementing stuff, and then that trend or that hack gets overused, it gets run out, and then I have to go for another one and another one and another one. And it's an endless cycle where you're never like going, oh, I'm actually stacked out, so I can't really take any work anymore. What you're doing is you're always hand to mouth because you're playing a very tactical game. If you want long-term success on LinkedIn, like I want long-term, I cannot rely on short-term gimmicks and tricks. And I get it, because I've done it as well. Buying shit that sounds really good, but they have a limited shelf life, or you never actually use it in the first place. You just buy it and then realize there's work involved and never finish it, never actually do anything with it. Sustainable success comes from not just playing short-term games, but actually building something that's systemized, that you just work and work and work. So proven systems rather than trends, a strategy that doesn't rely on a current popular thing. It isn't dependent on something that's out of your control. You're just working with good old-fashioned human nature and systems. Not very sexy. But I always say to people, don't think about your LinkedIn activity as being sexy. Think about all the things your LinkedIn activity will do for you that's even more sexy. the freedom, the better quality clients, the predictability in your business, the being able to pick who you work with because you've got a flow. All of those things are far more sexy. And what happens is we get excited by this new tactic. We get excited to implement it, and our excitement's in the wrong place. Our excitement's in the wrong place. We're excited about a tactic when we should be excited about we've got a process, a system that's running. It's giving us control. It's giving us confidence. It's giving us peace of mind. We're getting the flow out of it so that now the sexy thing is I'm enjoying this thing and I'm loving it. And we often go for short-term fixes to bigger problems, long-term problems. And we get, at the team, when we have meetings as a team with our own business strategy, we get so pissed off because we see people buying these short-term tactics. And what they're doing is they're trying to get to a bigger outcome, a long-term outreach, but they're so hooked in to the short term. And it's frustrating for us because if we say it, sometimes in post, we're often conscious that we could be looking like sour grapes. But it's like, no, what do you mean you've done this? No, what are you doing? And it's like, you get this because you have this with your own clients. People pursue short-term tactics and you know that it's a bad idea. You want a process and a system. And this was life-changing to me. Life-changing. Doing the same things over and over and over again and getting consistent results out of it, consistent flow of revenue, consistent flow of leads, and we're not up and down worrying about what we did with the algorithm, whether this happened, whether that happened, that tactic doesn't work anymore. All that stuff was just like gone. And the other thing to bear in mind with that is systems should outlive changes to a platform. And often what we see, whether it be LinkedIn or otherwise, and I've seen it, as the platform changes, some of these gimmicks and ways of doing things don't work. You only need to look at people who were getting lots of leads from content a few years ago, who are now saying, it's really hard. That's because they've built their house on sand. They've built it on something where the foundations of what their business is built on can shift. And so with that, their business constantly isn't on a firm foundation in terms of how do we acquire clients? How do we convert them? The foundation of that was not solid. And I've done it. And it's not nice. It's really not nice when you're running, hand to mouth. It's really unpleasant. And we all have tough times and difficult times. I can remember during COVID, it was horrendous. But the fundamentals of systems should hold up your business because realistically, you think about it, your business has to function as a well-oiled machine. If it doesn't, you will be run ragged. And that was the big thing for me. I do not want to be run ragged. That means I need systems and processes to actually deliver a result, but also to actually acquire the clients for that result. And these were the 7 lessons that I learned about LinkedIn. And actually, to be honest, you can apply these to every channel. You could apply these to lots of different aspects. But these were big things for me about LinkedIn. So think about your approach to this. Think about what you're doing and going, is it getting me the results I want? Has what I've done so far got me or made progress to the place I want to be? Because I had to have this conversation with myself and go, whatever I'm doing, it's not getting me where I want to be. I wasn't like, desperate or anything like that. I was like, I'm done with doing some of this stuff now. I'm a bit older. When I was in my 20s and early 30s, I would play around with all this stuff and I'd work late into the night and I don't want to do that anymore. And a lot of the stuff that's talked about on LinkedIn, if you don't get the fundamentals in place, you're basically playing those games. And if you're in your 20s and your 30s and you want to play around, cool, knock yourself out. But when you're like, I'm approaching 43, I don't want to do that stuff. I just want to enjoy stuff. I want to enjoy helping clients. I want to see their faces when they get the results. I want to see how that matters to them. I want to see them thrive. and I want to bring people on board to do just that. I don't want to be running around like a lunatic. I don't want to be chasing every last freaking trend. I'm done with that. I'm done with that. And you should be done with it too, because it's far more profitable when you do decide to ditch it. So hopefully this has been helpful. I will put a transcript of this on my website. So if you go to deanseddon.io, I'll put a transcript of this podcast up there so you can read it as well. And if you're in that place where you're going, I'm done with that, Dean, I want to build those systems. I want to build that predictability in my business, and I want to enjoy the sexy stuff, which is actually getting paid and enjoying the business and enjoying what I'm doing. Message me on LinkedIn, DM me the word win, and I will set up a time for you to speak to us, and we'll show you how our accelerator will help you make that impact and build that business the way you want without selling your soul to social media or LinkedIn. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you all again very, very soon next week for the next episode of the Mindset, Marketing and Money podcast.